Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Finca De Dios Wash Processed Guatemala from Ruby Coffee Roasters. And there's the bag right there. Right, and since this is the first time I'm reviewing one of Ruby's coffees on this channel, there's so much to discuss when it comes to this coffee roaster. Some very quick details out of the way. We're based out of Nelsonville, Wisconsin, which is a village of about 150 people. And they've been around since 2013, but their coffee has been a household name in the American coffee community for nearly as many years as they've been around. There's a terrific article on Sprudge that I'm going to feature in the description below from 2015 that kind of highlights Ruby and discusses a little bit of why they're so popular and a little bit about the business itself, so check that out if you're interested in a little bit more detail about this coffee roaster. But as far as my own experience with this coffee roaster goes, I've been drinking their coffee since I can't even tell how long, maybe 6-7 years or so. There's a coffee shop out in Colorado that used their coffee quite frequently as one of their guest roasters. And I actually haven't had their coffee in, I would say, maybe a year and a half, 2 years or so. And they were featured in my coffee roaster tier list where I put them in the amazing category. So I think very highly of this coffee roaster, as do so many people, and they're just a little different. And let's get into the details so you can kind of see why they're a little different than most of the coffee roasters I drink or review on this channel. This right here, by the way, is day 20 of this coffee. So they do have a recipe on their website for the Chemex, and it's a little hotter than I usually do on my water, so I settled at 206 degrees Fahrenheit, but they have the same ratio of 16.67 to 1 water to coffee ratio. And the roast profile on this is a true American medium. This right here doesn't really play around with the light, and it doesn't go too dark, but if you're ever looking for a true American medium, that's what Ruby specializes in. They're probably, if not the best, one of the best true medium American coffee roasters in the country. All right, let's start discussing the coffee though. Day 10, it was a little bit more developed than I remember, and I think having been drinking as many lighter coffees as I have, I had kind of forgotten that Ruby is a little bit more on that medium side, very true medium. A little bit roasty, but had some great flavor, kind of some burnt sugar and a tiny bit of nuttiness. Day 12, again, a little bit more developed than I had remembered. Became a little bit more complex as it cooled down though. A lot of sugar sweetness. And day 14, again, pretty sweet cup, quite a bit of caramel. Day 14 was a pretty nice day. I did lower the temperature, I was just curious. I played around with this coffee a little bit to 200 degrees and went a little finer on the grind. The coffee does draw down very quickly. And once it cools down, still a nice bit of sugar sweetness, but I do like when this coffee was brewed at a higher temperature and then you let the coffee cool down. I don't love the way that this coffee tastes when it's warmer, but once you kind of let it cool down to maybe a little bit above room temperature, beautiful sugar sweetness comes through in this coffee. Day 18, I would say some nice dark chocolate, bit of chocolate bitterness and some slight nuttiness. Pretty sweet with some subtle citric flavor notes, probably some orange. And this right here on day 20, again, it's a little bit above room temperature and definitely a little bit of that kind of roastiness, but as it's cooling down, all these other flavors, specifically the sweetness, I think they label maple syrup, caramel, brown sugar. Yeah, you're definitely getting a lot of sugar, you're definitely getting a lot of caramel in this coffee. Actually, let me go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what I was getting. And I don't think it'll come as a surprise, since this is more medium, that this is one of the higher bodied coffees I've ever had on this tasting wheel. Of course, the caramel is super high. The caramel in this coffee is great. This is one of the best caramel flavor notes I've ever gotten from a cup of coffee I've reviewed. Citrus fruit, I think that those oranges are really nice once you pull them out. So I have it at a level 3, the chocolate pretty high, bit of saltiness. I have the sweetness really high because I genuinely believe once this coffee hits the right temperature as it's cooled down, it is a very sweet coffee. Not overly, I mean, it has a little bit of bitterness, has a little bit of smokiness, and yeah, of course no florality. It's not going to be the most floral or fruity cup of coffee, given that it is a little bit more on the medium side. Cleanliness at a 2, I feel like that should be higher though. I would probably put the cleanliness higher. I don't know why I listed it as a 2 on that today, but anyway. My thoughts on this coffee, it reminded me of why I like Ruby so much. Even though they are a little bit darker, a little bit more developed than I usually drink, they do it so well that even though it might start out a little roasty, it might start out a little darker, once it hits the right temperature, it brings out these amazing things. And I think it's a testament to how good a coffee roaster can be when you have something that is a little bit more developed on the roast profile but comes out with beautiful components inside of the coffee. I really liked this. It's not going to always be my first choice, but for a traditional coffee, a more medium coffee, this is probably actually going to be my first choice. Ruby is probably my first choice if I ever want to go with something a little darker than I typically drink. And that's who I would suggest this coffee to, is anybody that still prefers a little bit more medium. Light isn't always necessarily better, and that's what was taught to me from a lot of the cuppings I did with Ruby. These medium coffees can produce some terrific flavors on par with some of the best lighter coffee roasters in the world. That's not to say that if you're a big light coffee drinker that you will love this, but if you do tend to prefer more traditional on the medium side, then I genuinely think that you will like Ruby as a whole, because they're an amazing roaster. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. But if you've tried this coffee, or if you're familiar with Ruby as well, please let me know your thoughts and opinions of them, because honestly I've never heard anybody say anything negative about this coffee roaster. People love it for what it is. It's a medium. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Finca De Dios wash processed Guatemala from Ruby Coffee. Thank you for watching.